main street of Pioche. Nothing to it. Our room was right up above that sign. Looking down to the hotel and down below the bar area. Used to be a bowling rink down here. Calling it a dance hall. Most of these places have old safes, and this one's no different. This is the second hunt that we've done at the Overland. The first one was 13 years ago in 2011. At that time, we had very limited equipment. The bar area looked different, no doubt about it. Our choice of rooms at that time was room 15 at the end of the hallway. We were originally set to rent room 10, which some TripAdvisor had listed had some kind of paranormal activity to it, some outlandish claims, but we were ready to check it out anyway. Upon walking into the room and seeing the old shag carpeting with pet stains on it, we decided we didn't want to stay there after all. We chose an upscale, room 15. Even though we weren't in the alleged haunted room, room 11, we did capture a small amount of activity on the cell sensor EMF units that we have. Those small devices, along with the surveillance case unit, which we show here, which was big and really heavy equipment, was all that we had. We still use the cell sensors as a type of early warning device. You set them up in the room, you make sure they're in a position where it's not registering anything. In the middle of the night, they go off. Well, something's changed. From there, you can use other equipment. Going back to that investigation in 2011, I had eventually decided that the EMF being set off was probably due to a faulty ballast on a light pole that sat next to the room itself. Through direct observance, it was the most likely explanation. The entire hotel has now been remodeled. Armoires at both ends. 8 and 6 are common rooms. They were a lengthy hallway, comes down here with an armoire at the end. That's room 10, the alleged haunted room. We walk down that corridor. Down there is room 10. I couldn't get any closer with the maid down there, but it looks like the shag carpeting is gone. This is room number 23, the Bear's Den. The night bartender swears that this is the one room that is actively haunted, and that he's seen some videos come out of the room which were, well, compelling. And if you want, you can ask him. He'll maybe show them to you like he did to me. Our room was a suite, 2-room, very elaborate, compared to this, which is a single room. One thing I did notice is that this room lies directly over the slot machines downstairs, which means that's an awful lot of energy being pumped under it. Our room was actually 2 rooms with 2 double beds. It was very nice. It gave us plenty of space to be able to set up all of our equipment. The only document verifiable death that occurred inside of the hotel was that of Robert B. Free, 1964 hotel owner. On June 13, 1964, a man and wife couple positioned themselves to be the last patrons to leave the saloon, at which time they pulled out a weapon, a handgun, and beat Robert B. Free half to death until he gave them the night's receipts, which was $500. According to the newspaper reports of the day, after they beat Robert B. Free and jumped in their car and took off with the $500, Free managed to crawl into the middle of the street, where he was later found by a sheriff's deputy. Free would be in a coma for 2 weeks before expiring. This would ultimately complicate the state's trial against the 2 assailants. The robber duo tried to escape southward out of the town, but their car broke down and they were apprehended by sheriff's deputies hiding in some trees. As Robert languished in a coma for 2 weeks after being beat up, and the assailants had already been charged with aggravated battery and robbery. Upon Robert's expiring, their attorney jumped up and claimed that they could not be charged with homicide because now that's double jeopardy. They had already been charged with 1 crime. That, of course, was soundly rejected by the court. But when a witness who had observed the couple in the bar with Robert B. Free 2 hours before closing time was killed in a car accident, the court had to reconsider the options, and that allowed them to actually only serve 10 years. Robert B. Free was a member of the International Order of Oddfellows, and was buried in the Oddfellows Masonic Cemetery there in Pioche. A couple of the historical tourist destinations are just down the street from the hotel. $1 Million Courthouse, so named because of budgeting overruns when it was first built, sits right next to what is left over of one of the old dilapidated hotels. That hotel, originally built in 1895 by the Ely Valley Mining Company, is now derelict. The owner has himself met his demise. Now it has its cheated back into the unincorporated city-county. The problem is, the county doesn't want it and doesn't know how to get rid of it. It is certainly structurally unsafe. The $1 Million Courthouse is structurally safe and is worth walking through. Okay, I got it.
Well, hold a second. He was appointed, let's see, appointed by Governor Carville as a member of the Honorary Board of Visitors of the University of Nevada. You know, well, the point is, this guy was a judge, and, you know, he was important, right? All these guys are his relatives.
Okay.
You know.
They appointed his relatives
So
and
yeah,
the
right.
elders?
So somebody else that was a judge that used this thing, somebody else could have come in and said, well, let's put him up instead and we'll have his relative.
This old guy was a great guide. I think his name was Louis or something like that.
And we climbed up into the attic and got up on the roof, and he showed me where to go.
I asked him if he wanted to be on YouTube, and he said, absolutely. So if you run into him, say, hey, I saw you on YouTube.
This was the old Chinatown down here.
Well, where's that at right now?
It's just, well, it's the houses.
It's gone,
The
but-
buildings aren't there.
Yeah, where did it used to be?
Just right down the hill, just straight out in front.
They're not moving very much, though.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, you know, in the trial, actually, the trial stopped because some of the jurors we used to have 12 of them, but now we have 8.
What happened to them?
I don't know.
they actually get stolen.
I think they got borrowed by somebody. Somebody said, hey, we need somebody. And so they say, we'll take somebody from the courtroom. And so he's probably working somewhere else in town.
What's this about? This a ballot box? What is this? Jury selection box. That's how they selected the jury?
Yeah.
They brought a whole bunch of people in and they gave them a number and they
I
rotated
guess so.
it.
And then
And they were like, you get to serve tonight.
Yeah, right.
This is the old jail.
Somebody in there.
Yeah, there's somebody in there, yeah.
And we've had some people come up here and they get kind of excited about the jail. And one of them was a guy called Chris Angel.
Yes, I know he is. He's in,
from anything, right?
yeah, he's in Las
And so he
Vegas.
got locked into this jail. I was here.
And he tried to
Get out.
get out.
He got out. First of all, they took off all his clothes, right? They put him in there. They put a padlock on here, right? So how did he get out? And so he was up here and he had a whole bunch of his fans in the courtroom there. And then I was here, you know,
Yeah.
to represent the county or whatever, or, you know, to try to
Yeah.
keep...
To keep
And
it
so
honest.
I came in here with him and they stripped him and they locked him in there. But afterwards I said, so how'd you do it? And he said, well, I had a mirror.
Yeah. He's a trick.
I had a mirror over here.
Okay.
Oh.
But how did that help him? He said, well, I had something that I swallowed.
Yeah. And he
I coughed it
regurgitated it.
up on the
Yeah.
floor there. And
Yeah.
then
Picked it.
I strung it together. Right?
Right.
And I stuck it out here and I unlocked the padlock.
Yeah.
Well,
Come on. How could you...
Well, he won't tell you
He's not gonna
exactly.
tell you all of
How
it.
could you unlock a padlock here?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He won't tell you exactly how, but he's got a show right now.
Well, I don't know how he got out.
Yeah.
But he showed me, I mean, you know, I looked in here after he'd gotten out, and there was some liquid on the floor. And he said he coughed up whatever he had in his stomach, you know,
Yeah.
which he needed to assemble
Yeah.
to get it out here. But still, you know.
Well, he started that situation first.
So
and he
did it
come up
have
with-
the
But you
lock?
know what I think? I think that he had somebody else, one of his gang, locked in one of the jails here, right?
Could be.
And so
Possibly.
he came out and took the key off. They waited a little while, and then he got out, right?
Well, when the lock, was it his lock that they used? Or was it yours?
That's a good question.
Yeah, because if it was his
Probably
lock,
use
it's
his
probably
lock.
a combo lock, and you didn't
It
have to
could be
pick anything.
the remote control
He
lock.
obviously didn't need a key, right?
Right.
So this is all metal, right?
Out of the
Everything's metal. And what is this window back here? Would that normally go outside?
Well, that's a window, so you can get a little ventilation. It's not lined up with the windows outside.
Okay, so it basically comes down through the wall, and you get a little ventilation through it.
Yeah, the wall
Okay.
was set back there about a foot or half a foot.
I got you. Last time we came in here, I don't remember. I think these guys were in here, but we didn't have enough equipment to film.
There's just one guy in there, and he's
Yeah.
a mannequin. He doesn't even have any arms.
I see that. Back to normal. No. This was the exercise yard.
Well, that isn't original. That was built. This was built this way in 1975.
Oh, okay.
If you look over here, you can see the damage that the hill has done to the back of it.
Yeah, it's caved it
It
in.
hasn't damaged the building that much,
Yeah,
but it's got to be removed, you know.
yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of work there. That's sad, you know. If I was a billionaire, fascinating.
Well, you know, one thing you could do is you could be a billionaire, or you could just convince other people to spend their money.
Yeah, and
that's
some
that's
people
probably
are,
a better idea.
some people are very good at it. The old guy was eager to see this old hotel that's next door to the jail be rebuilt. I told him, although not a millionaire myself, I do run into them sometimes on hunts. It's amazing how many people are interested in the paranormal. They just don't tell other people until you get close to them. So I told him I'd go down to the recorder's office and ask how much they wanted for the property, just out of curiosity. The Lincoln County Courthouse is just about a mile down the road, and he gave me the name of the man to discuss it with. But when we walked in and inquired, we were told that that gentleman had taken 2 weeks off. I carried no camera equipment in. Usually inside of these public buildings it is restricted because they have some kind of holding facility in there for inmates. This picture is stock from Wikipedia. After learning that the individual that we were referred to was not present, we headed on down to the recorder's office. Inside were two ladies discussing whatnots. I inquired about the hotel in question, and the first lady responded that that hotel was not for sale. It would cost the county $1 million in order to transfer ownership, and you'd have to be a millionaire in order to buy it. Referring back to the conversation that I had had earlier, I kind of wondered how she was able to look at somebody and decide that they were or were not a millionaire, because I can't do it. So I changed topics and then inquired as to where the Masonic cemetery was in town. First lady said there was no Masonic cemetery. She looked at the second lady, and the second lady said, yes, there is no Masonic cemetery. Okay, well, the guy that we're looking for is buried in the Masonic cemetery, so now I'm kind of curious as to exactly where he's buried at. We left the courthouse and decided that we'd go ahead and drive up to Boot Hill, which is where the real cemetery is at, and ask the people living in the neighborhood if they knew exactly where the Masonic cemetery plot is, or at least had been. But we didn't have to look far. As soon as we pulled up, take a look. Sure looks like a Masonic cemetery to me. Here is the Masonic cemetery here in Pioche at Boot Hill, where Robert B. Free is buried. This is an old graveyard. I don't know when the last time they cut the weeds out here. Here we go, rotten. Unknown. How many of those there are? There's another one, unknown. There we go. So this is the grave of Robert B. Free. He was born 1886. He was the one that was murdered in the Overland Hotel, crawled into the street, and expired after they robbed him of $500.
$500?
That's what they got. The three chain links at the lower part of the tombstone indicate that he was a member of the International Order of Oddfellows. I guess they lumped all of the fraternities together. Well, that's the cemetery. Black magic sitting up there. Back in 2011, when we were last here, there was no grass. Pioche's old Boot Hill lies right across from the Masonic cemetery. At that time, I wouldn't say it was well taken care of, but at least you could go walk along the line, and when you came upon some of the grave markers, you could actually read the grave markers. That is now almost impossible. All of them have fallen over or the littering has faded out. They haven't been taken care of, and it doesn't appear as though anybody cares one way or another. I took it as a sign that the public administrators just don't care about their main tourist attraction. That was then, and this is now, 2024. We have learned a bunch about paranormal investigating during that time frame. We aren't shy about passing that information on so the viewer won't fall into the same pitfalls that we did. We like to share our experiences because we truly believe that what we're doing is a new frontier of science. Just like anybody else, we can open up any of the social media sites, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and we'll find people on there who are trying to solicit other people to join with them to go on a hunt in a graveyard. And it usually comes with a price. It's exciting to be scared. It's not so excited if you get scared and you get a little something else that goes along with it, such as a trespassing citation. So far we worked by them, and we want you to be able to do it also. We present this from a layman's point of view, a been there, done that experience. Take it or leave it. Walking into a restaurant or nightclub, you might get to meet somebody exotic. Someone that could change your life. Walking into a graveyard, you might meet somebody who is exotic and dead. There are more than 600 ghost towns in the state of Nevada, and these are completely abandoned towns, not halfway there towns like Pioche is. If you want to start going out to explore them, you better have a four-wheel drive. Probably a dozen or so we've done hunts in, others are on the back burner. We'll show a few of these that are easy to get to or not completely abandoned. We'll start with one of the best places to ghost hunt in, which is Tonopah, and work our way back around up the highway to Pioche. Tonopah, of course, has the Mizpah, the Belvada, and the Clown motels, but we're going to focus on the graveyards. On our reference map, Pioche, where we're filming and staying at, is here. Tonopah is over here. Graveyards are good fodder for beginning ghost hunters. Remember, every grave has a story.
Old cowgirl.
Old cowgirl, that's right.
Malapay.
Lorena Tricky Peterson. Buried in the Tonopah Cemetery in Section V, number 50 and 51. Husband Magnus is next to her. Malapai Mike died in 1968. Lorena Peterson is undeniably one of the most famous cowgirls that ever lived. She rode Roman. That means she was riding two horses at once, one leg on each horse while they're tethered together, along with actor Tom Mix during the movie Queen of Sheba in 1921. Sadly, that movie did not survive the MGM fires. She also played as a stunt double for Mary Pickford in the movie Through the Back Door in 1921. That movie did survive the MGM fires. Watching the whole movie, it's hard to convince yourself that they didn't swap back and forth between Lorena and Mary Pickford. They really resemble each other. I think that the facial close-ups would most likely be Mary Pickford. Lorena would stay with the rodeo circuit until 1927. She was shacking up with a common-law husband known as J.P. Smiling Slim Harris and doing the rodeo circuit together. After a rodeo event, they were driving back to camp in an open-top car. Remember, this is 1927. Use your imagination as what the car looked like. As they crossed over some railroad tracks, there was a transient camp there. One of the hobos, lack of a better term, grabbed a knife, jumped up, went after Slim, and stabbed him in the heart, probably trying to procure some money. He was dead on the spot. The sheriff of the county was, how would we say, suspicious? He interviewed all of the shopkeepers in the county and then ended up going out of the county and finding a store where the gentleman running the store did identify the knife as being sold to her. So much for that alibi. And now Lorena's story changed, a little. She said that Slim was an abuser, that she bought the knife to protect herself because he was always beating her up. And that when driving home from the event, he told her that he was leaving her for another woman. He was tired of beating her up. He wanted someone else to beat up. So she pulled out her new shiny knife and stuck him, just a little. Lorena was charged with murder, but a really neat defense attorney got her off by claiming that if you charged her with murder, someone who spent her entire life sleeping out under the open skies, that alone would be enough to kill her. The jury bought it, and they let her go. It did ruin her rodeo career, and that's how she wound up in Tonopah. So here's a hint for you guys out there. If you're ever planning on leaving your wife for another woman, Be sure that you're not driving the car with both hands on the steering wheel and she has a knife in her purse when you tell her. She's buried right across the street from the Burger King gas station as you head east out of Tonopah. All you gotta do is park at a Burger King and walk across the street. She is one of my favorite dead people. Every grave has a story to tell. Just about a quarter mile or so up the street heading west is the Clown Motel. And behind that is the Tonopah Miners Cemetery. We are at the old Tonopah graveyard at night. Running some K2 meters, seeing if we pick anything up at all. And wearing our snake boots, because I'm sure there are rattlesnakes out here somewhere. This was a fun hunt. I recommend this one. All these guys were killed in the Belmont mine fire back in 1906. And way out there, we see a black cat walking across the graveyard in front of us.
Black cat in the graveyard? Wow. Are you a real cat?
Yeah, he's a real cat. Oh, there he is. Look at that. Got a black cat in a graveyard.
What an oddity.
For its age, this graveyard has been well kept up. About 30 miles south is the Goldfield Cemetery. Goldfield, Nevada cemetery is very large. It would take you probably a whole day to go through it to read all of the tombstones. People have posted online reviews saying that, you can read the writing on the tombstones and yet they're supposed to be 100 years old. This is all fake. Well, that's because the town keeps it up. It's a very good tourist attraction. Every one of these stones is somebody's story. If you're going to bring equipment out and try to talk to them, ask them what their name is. Ask them for their story. See if they tell you something. It may not be what you expect. Probably the most famous tombstone in this cemetery is this one about some guy eating library paste. Everybody says, that was fake. If somebody did do that, what a loser. And that's the story, but it's not his story. Town historians say he was homeless, he was transient, he was hanging out in an alley behind the library, and he found a bottle of library paste which tasted sweet to him. He hadn't eaten, so he ate it. Issue was it contained alum, not usually fatal to a human being, but in this case the mixture seemed to have glued him up. And that's his story, as verified from newspapers of 1908. If you're looking for a loser, I think this guy fits the bill. He had a drink and a cigar to splash in, walked out in the street and shot himself. Hope he paid for the drink and the cigar. End of his story. At this graveyard, you could spend all day long reading people's stories. What is now the ghost town of Rhyolite grew from 0 to 10,000 people in just 3 years. Rhyolite has a fair-sized cemetery. We've been to Rhyolite several times, but we haven't run any equipment when we were there. It's on our paranormal to-do list. The town itself is easily reached by automobile. To get to the cemetery, you may have to have a pickup. Heading back up the loop towards Pioche, and about 30 miles west of Caliente is the ghost town of Delamar. The graveyard here is small but impressive. It's 13 miles from the highway turnoff on sandy wash roads. You can make it by a car. I've seen people do it. You'll come up on the graveyard first. Past that, I'd say you need a four-wheel drive to get up into the old town area. On our progressive ghost town loop map, you'll see other towns. These are humanly occupied towns. And while they all have cemeteries or graveyards of some kind, most of these people would take offense to you prodding around in their cemeteries where their loved ones are buried. And as we move back around to our starting point at Boot Hill and Pioche, it raises this important question, which you should be asking yourself or your team leader. Who owns this property? Who has title to this land? There is no vacant land in the United States. For that point, I don't think there's any vacant land in the world. Referencing the United States, our land is either owned by the government, private ownership, or corporations which, according to Google, hold the same rights as individuals. Grave sites can be held by private individuals, such as plantation owners out of the Old South with burials on their property, or huge commercial cemeteries like Forest Lawn. Governments can legally hold and manage all kinds of mortuaries and cemeteries, from the smallest town all the way up to Arlington National Cemetery. Yeah, try carrying a K2 or REM pod into that one. And I would say you need to do it before and not after you get arrested. So let's take a quick review of these graveyards that we just visited and rate them according to our index of how friendly they are towards tourists. Our first stopping point was the gravesite of Lorena Tricky Peterson, right across from the Burger King in Tonopah. I said that according to me, her story was a favorite. Sticking a wife-abusing common-law husband with a knife and claiming that a homeless person did it as they were driving over some railroad tracks is a classic. Not only that, but she almost got away with it. Now, the Petersons are buried in the new Tonopah Cemetery. There are almost 3,000 people buried there, and I could find no rules and regulations governing this piece of property. We saw no signage regarding rules while we were there. That's not to say they don't, only that we didn't see them, or could not find them posted on any online resource. Due to the apparent lack of legal signage, we gave this graveyard a B rating. The old Tonopah Cemetery is a different story. According to online town sources, this cemetery is open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. There is no admission cost. They even suggest that you can park your car in the Clown Motel parking lot next door. You can't get any better than that. Just don't step in a gopher hole and twist your ankle or get bit by a rattlesnake. We give this cemetery an A+ rating. And we did stay at the Clown Motel one time ways back. We didn't have much equipment, but we did get some hits. And we've done multiple hunts at the Mizpah and Belvada. This town is active. Our next stop was 30 miles south of Tonopah at the Goldfield Cemetery, where that guy ended up eating library paste. The Goldfield Cemetery is open all hours. No admission charge, but that doesn't mean it would be wise to be in it after dark. This graveyard is huge. Like the old Tonopah graveyard, we would have given this an A+, except for one thing. There is very limited lodging here. There's a few cabins for rent, but the hotel has been shut down for eons. Even paranormal investigators need a place to lay their head after the hunt. So we gave the old Goldfield Cemetery an A-. Be aware, there are less than 800 inhabitants in this entire county, which means only a handful of first responders should you fall into something or get bit by something. Continuing our march south a couple hours, we now come to the ghost town of Rhyolite. The town and cemetery are government-owned. Bureau of Land Management cannot remove any artifacts without turning it over to them. That would also apply to the graveyard. The BLM has set visiting hours at sunrise to sunset. And since it's within just a few miles of a fairly good-sized town with an ample sheriff's department, I would expect that they patrol it. The one positive is that they're not trying to get admission out of anybody. Being unable to investigate at night puts a real damper on things. Unlike what some would think, it's not because you want a spooky setting. What you want is a setting with the least possible amount of contamination. Specifically, planes, trains, and automobiles, kids yelling, dogs barking. Sound tends to propagate more reliably at night when the temperature near the ground is cooler. And of course, the clearer the sound, the easier it is to determine if it is actually an EVP. To complicate further, your biggest assist of an infrared light source cannot be used during the daytime. We gave Rhyolite a C, middle of the road. Heading southeastwardly, about 4 hours from Rhyolite, is the ghost town of Delamar. Unlike Rhyolite, it is open 24 hours a day with free public access, which as paranormal investigators is just what we look for. You can spend the night in the 2 graveyards that are there. You can run your metal detectors and keep what you find, provided you're not removing off of somebody's active mining claim. There's still a few of those around there. The one big issue is the availability of electricity, which is 0. This town predates that. That can put a damper on a hunt. You will need a generator to do an all-night investigation, or at least a lot of batteries. And of course your only lodging is your tent and sleeping bag, maybe the bed or cab of your truck. Because Old Delamar is a hunter's paradise in both metal detecting and paranormal, we gave it a A-. We only marked it down a little because of its remoteness and being able to access it. Back to Pioche and Boot Hill, the same regulations and hours were attached to this graveyard as we encountered at other graveyards, the public hours being set at sunrise to sunset or dawn to dusk. So the obvious question arises, why is it important to know this information? I mean, we never saw anyone out there the whole time we were there anyway. Well, because Nevada revised statutes make it plain that if you are in an area after you have been told not to be in that area for any reason, you are trespassing. Nevada is a state which relies heavily on its trespass statute because of the statewide casino industry. You can easily Google Nevada revised statutes and find it under NRS 207-200. It provides for a lengthy description of how owners need to place signage on their property to provide warning of the potential for trespassing. We saw signs, these kind of signs, the ones telling us about the graveyard, but we saw no signs anywhere warning us about the limitation of hours for visitation. We weren't aware of it all until after we returned to Las Vegas and began researching this video. However, we still didn't violate their rules. I didn't want to risk Jan being bitten by a rattlesnake. I worry about that far more than being rousted by a sheriff's deputy. We did read about their goofy regulations once back at home while researching the internet, but the internet is not considered a valid source for imparting legal information unless both parties have agreed to it in advance. But you can fall prey to these small-town traps, and if not in Nevada, your state may even be worse. Remember, the most important thing to ask yourself while going on a hunt is, who owns this property? If you want to say anything, now's the time to speak. And a few of them did. Don't hang up the phone just yet. We have the thermal monitor out here. And we're checking with that. Hello? Anybody wants to talk? Come closer to me. We have the PBS 11 right here. We're running it sweeps in both different directions. And we're recording. We're going up and down here. This is Boot Hill in Pioche. Sadly, as historical as it is, most of the graveyard markers have now deteriorated and fallen over. I have the windsock on, so I'll be able to hear you all right. Go ahead. If you want to say something, you can speak right through this unit here, right through this radio unit. Change it over to night shot. That'll help a little bit. Shot by officer
5 times. Wow.
Shot by officer 5 times. June 26, 1875. John Bass. John? That's looking a little bit colder than the others as far as the thermal is. On these thermal forward-looking infrared devices, the presence of blue will usually indicate a colder area than in the rest of the surrounding area. It could indicate that there is a presence. As far as the thermal is, getting some blue on that. Slow the rate down on this. Okay. Reverse forward sweep rate is here. And sweep rate. There we go. That's better. That's better.
Alright.
Showing blue. Some blue as far as the wood that fell down. That's the first time I've seen that. 1844, 1873. Was it Morone? Courtney Morone? Morone Courtney? Actually the grave of Morgan Courtney, a famous gunfighter who ended up getting shot in the back by person or persons unknown.
Merlin? What?
1844 to 1873. Marrow something. Oh, I heard something. Something came through. Did you hear it? Female voice. There's a female voice. Maroney Courtney, what did you die of? Through the PC, I'll be able to resurrect it and see what it said. But I did hear a little female voice there for just a second, just something. What sounded like a female's voice sounds more like a man's voice when slowed down. If you have watched other videos from Stangia and Paranormal, you are aware that EVPs come through much too fast for human hearing to understand. Slowing this down on repeat right here is a good example. Marrow something. Oh, I heard something. Something came through. Did you hear it?
I heard some. 1844 to 1873. And again, that's completely hot.
What happened here?
Another one that fell down.
Yeah.
Okay, this one fell over and it says, shot. It looks like he shot himself. Shot myself accidentally is what it looks like it says. And again, but it's out of the ground. We've got some dark blue coming up there. You hear something? I heard a little something there, but it's not very definite.
The voice coming through.
Yeah, a little voice.
Hey, how are you? There's no marks in here.
We don't know who you were, dear, but somebody loved you enough to leave you flowers.
Is Mrs. Stump in here too?
No, she's down south. Way down south, down in Tombstone. That was a trip. I'd like to go back to her grave and try this.
Centipede!
Oh yeah, there's a centipede. There's a centipede right there. Where's he? Yep,
Go away, go away.
yep. He's a big one.
And that multi-legged critter reminding us that it is now dusk and it is time for us to depart this area. Although we captured no activity inside of the Overland Hotel, it was a perfect stay for a small setting. The downstairs bar was comfy, and the bartender didn't mind sharing his ghost stories. As far as the hotel goes, it was A-rated. As far as the paranormal activity level, after 3 straight days of recording, it was none encountered and none recorded. Now that was just the hotel. For the place that we made our captures at, which is Boot Hill, and the guidelines of our cemetery review, we gave it a D. Not taking into account the EVPs that we captured there, those were really cool. But the total lack of maintenance of the graveyard itself. This is the town's #1 tourist attraction, and they act like they don't care. Although we have heard the rumors that the town doesn't really know where these graves were at. They were there somewhere, and even as a tribute, they're not being taken care of. As far as our reception at the county government, well, we'll leave that one for you to rate. Will you come back? Will you rise from the dead? What will your story be?